You're listening to This Naked Mind with Annie Grace.
Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Natania. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Annie. Really good. How are you doing?
So good. It's so great to be here with you.
Likewise.
So why don't you sort of take us back to the beginning in your journey with alcohol? Where did it all start for you?
Sure. So my story with alcohol really started, as many kids do, with a sip or two of their parents' wine or some other adult's wine. But the first time I really remember getting drunk was until I was about 16. And I remember stealing a little bit of my parents' alcohol, mixing it with some water, and drinking it with some of my friends in my basement. And I just remember feeling like it was everything I had heard. I felt silly. I felt like I didn't care what people thought about me. And like I was doing this very fun, secret adult thing that at the time was off limits to me. And from there, I remember just feeling super giddy at any chance to drink, like drinking with friends or with boys, just felt like the nights that unlocked all of these really exciting experiences, and where the stories and the friendships and the romances and just everything worth being there for really started. I also just absolutely felt like I was more fun, more funny, and just overall more enjoyable to be around when I had been drinking. Like it was this chance for people who I often felt quite nervous around to really see me without feeling embarrassed or anxious. Even with all of these initial really positive feelings and definitely a very strong desire to drink, I also very quickly had nights where I felt maybe I'd gone too far and crossed some lines or acted in a way that I never normally would. I remember apologizing a lot to people and really just trying to explain my actions, but never really being able to. It felt like I was always looking for some deeper reason under the surface for why my behavior was so bad when I would drink, but never making the connection that alcohol actually just causes you to make dumb decisions that you would not make normally. So, right away in my alcohol journey, I was having both very positive and very negative drinking experiences. After high school, I actually took a gap year in another country where I signed a contract to not drink for a year. Looking back, not having to decide in so many situations whether I would drink or not really just came as this huge relief, especially because the country I was in had a legal drinking age of 18, and just not having to deal with it at all for that year was such a nice break. But as the year was coming to a close, I remember feeling this really intense anxiety about drinking again, and would often journal about how I just felt so torn and really just unsure of my decision either way. Reading my entries from that time, so much of my view of alcohol was really tied up in morality. If I drank, I was a bad person, and if I didn't drink, I was a good but a very boring person who would be missing out on everything. One of my journal entries from that time, which would have been around 2017, reads: "When I drink, I feel I will stop at nothing to get attention. I am going to try as hard as I can to stay sober. I am making this decision not fully understanding why I am making it, not fully convinced of its benefits, and very afraid of missing out, and hope that no one notices that I'm not drinking." Part of me felt very excited to drink again and knew that I would. But the other part of me felt this fear to return to situations that I just hadn't been in for so long, and also a lot of guilt for feeling excitement to drink again. I had just had this full year of incredible experiences not drinking, and I felt guilty that that wasn't enough of an adventure, and that I honestly was just excited to go home to Colorado and drink. I spent the next year living in my hometown, which is Fort Collins, and pretty regularly drinking on the weekends and in most social situations. This was my first exposure to being in college. I got a fake ID, and it was the first time in my drinking career that I started really regularly blacking out. At the end of that year, I felt super, super depressed and like I just needed a change of scenery. So I moved from Fort Collins to Chicago, where I still live today, and which was a place where I didn't know anyone. And this feeling of being anonymous really opened up the door for my drinking in a lot of ways. I felt like I could experiment with so many things that I had previously been afraid to, just knowing so many people in my hometown. And one way this played out was drinking a lot. partly to fit in with people who were all new to me, and partly because it was just what people did, especially in the service industry where I worked at the time. Chicago is, as many people know, a really big drinking city. And I turned 21 2 months after moving here. And so it really just felt like this ability to participate in the city and in society in a way that I never had before as an adult. I started bartending and started to sneak alcohol during my shifts, and then eventually started working at a bar where drinking was accepted and even encouraged. I remember doing things like making fun of alcohol free beer, feeling really frustrated when people wouldn't want to drink with me. And I remember I started drinking White Claws while I would get ready for my shifts to kind of get my buds going before getting to work. And then going into work and drinking anywhere from 2 to 10 shots during my shift. This was the most regular my drinking got. And I started drinking at home pretty often, which I had never done before. There were a lot of low moments during this time, and just a general haze of depression and very low energy. And while I'm sure I was subconsciously questioning my drinking during this time, I actually don't remember thinking that it was a cause of any of the problems in my life. And in fact, was actually this ticket to all of the social situations that I was participating in, and the only way I could really experience the crazy fun experiences of your 20s. And then my personal turning point night happened on my 23rd birthday in October of 2021. I celebrated my day, having this amazing day, just doing all of these things I really loved by myself. And then that night, I had my birthday party at the bar that I worked at, and I invited everyone I knew and also worked with, and just felt very nervous going into the night and ended up blacking out almost immediately. I remember waking up and calling people who had been at the party to ask if I'd said or done anything embarrassing or bad, because again, this was everyone I knew and also my place of employment at that time. And I remember the day after, it was this dark, rainy day, and I just felt so depressed and so anxious and just very frustrated that I had to call people and ask about my actions because there would otherwise just be no way of me knowing. And just really sad that I'd had this incredible day, part of my birthday, filled with the activities that I loved, and then ending it with this disaster of an evening. So I started looking up books about sobriety. I ordered your book, and then I left it in the package for 6 months in the corner of my room before finally reading it. And after 6 more months of more nights of excessive drinking and embarrassing moments and blackouts, I don't even remember specifically what prompted me to read This Naked Mind, but I really felt ready for it. I just immediately clicked with a lot of pieces of your story. I grew up in Colorado, I moved to Chicago, and I work in PR and marketing. So right away, you really caught my attention. And I remember reading the first few paragraphs about how you would wake up in a panic at 3 a.m. and immediately relaxing because I thought, oh, I can just so relate to that. I do that too. And as I read This Naked Mind, I could really feel the changes happening almost immediately. It's kind of hard to describe how quickly things clicked into place for me. But looking back, not drinking was an idea that I had toyed with for so long. So the foundation had really been laid, but always with the mindset that I would be missing out and sacrificing a lot. And also that I was just too young to ever even think about giving up alcohol forever. The biggest mindset shift for me was realizing that I had always felt like alcohol was this thing that I personally couldn't handle, to realizing that no one is really equipped to handle it because of the nature of what it is. And also realizing that I had always viewed it as this very adult and very grown up thing. So to realize that it actually was something that many adults struggle with in some way was incredibly eye opening for me. I was still working at the bar during the time of reading the book, and for the first time was turning away free alcohol offered to me because I just felt so turned off from drinking, and like I couldn't look at alcohol the same way at all. It felt in so many ways like a veil had been lifted and I could see my drinking for what it was, which just really just wasn't something that was helping me in any way. So I finished your book in March of 2022, and by the end of April realized I couldn't remember when I'd had my last drink. So I decided to just stick with it and see what happened. And right away, there were so many changes that I felt really quickly. And I really knew almost immediately that I would never go back to drinking. A lot of these were measurable. I lost 20 pounds over the next year. I got promoted. I sold my car because I felt like I had energy to walk places and to take the train. I entered into a really serious and healthy relationship. I remember actually going on a first date about a month into not drinking, which normally would be something that I would pregame and also order several drinks at. And just feeling so proud to not order a drink. And like, if this was a problem with the person that I was on a date with, that we just wouldn't be a good match anyway. My face and puffiness just went down so quickly. My skin started to glow. I felt like I was just walking around with my head held high because I felt like I discovered this secret that was making everything in my life so much easier. I felt like my life really just started to explode with energy, confidence, and this deep trust in myself that I had never truly experienced before. And so, as I started to talk about this with my friends and share that I wasn't drinking, there were certainly some friendships that I lost, but so many that really stuck around and actually got so much better. It shocked me how many people weren't fazed by my not drinking or who could really relate to the struggles I felt, and how often the most uncomfortable moment was the first time telling people, but how life just moved right along after that. I'm still a part of a wine club. I still go out to bars and have many friends who drink. In fact, I feel like my social life has actually grown so much because I'm able to go out and listen to my body and mind tell me that I'm tired and I'm ready to leave. So I don't leave social situations just completely depleted or way later than I meant to. People have commented that I seem a lot more peaceful and sure of myself. And I think that so much of that is attributed to alcohol not taking up so much of my decision making space in my brain. I don't think I realized how much I thought about it until suddenly I just didn't have to think about how fast I was drinking or how much money I was spending on alcohol, or if the waiter would be back soon so I could order another drink, or if I was eating too much and wouldn't get drunk as fast, and mainly just if I was drinking enough to feel comfortable with myself and the people that I was spending time with. Without all of these thoughts clouding my brain, my social situations were suddenly opened up to both really listen and pay attention to the people around me, but also to check in with myself and start to pay attention to the other thoughts that were happening inside of my head. I started to notice how I didn't actually really enjoy time with certain people, and also that I so greatly enjoyed time with others that I couldn't believe I'd been so distracted drinking when I was spending time with them. I feel like I can always get myself home safely when I'm ready to leave. And perhaps my favorite part, I remember the entire process of getting ready for bed and falling asleep and knowing that I'll wake up calm in the morning with full memories of the night before. All of these things have really amounted into something that I didn't realize I'd been missing, which was this deep trust in myself and knowing that my mind would be present for each of the decisions that I make. And I also just feel so, so grateful for stopping drinking at such a young age. I think I always viewed stopping drinking in your 20s as a question of how am I going to make it through the next several decades of social outings without alcohol, which for me has really turned into, oh, I get to be sober for so many social events and so many life events over the next few years. I don't ever have to worry about drinking too much, about these events blending together. And I'm just so excited to have so much in front of me that hasn't been ruined by drinking. And I just feel like I saved myself years of wasted money, of ingesting something so bad for you, and of blurring all my memories together.
Mm.
And just overall, just feeling like time has just slowed down for the first time in my life. And like I have so much more free time to focus on things I actually want to be doing.
Oh, that's just beautiful. That's amazing. I love that so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Really cool. And so, yeah, so tell us more about like how it's been socially.
Yeah. I think that one situation where I have felt pressure to drink, but I feel like luckily with COVID, there's just a lot, obviously a lot more people are working from home. So the workplace is a lot less, there's just a lot less opportunity where you have to say no. But I do remember that has been the place that has felt the most difficult in saying no because you kind of are getting into a personal story with coworkers who you work with in a professional space. But in terms of social situations with friends, I feel like this has been something that I just feel so proud of. And I feel like if I had heard someone say, confidently that they weren't drinking, or that they, didn't feel the need to kind of explain themselves, or get into their whole situation, but just to say no, and they actually prefer not drinking, that just would have been so crazy for me to see. So I feel like that's kind of the approach I've really taken, and people have responded really well to it. And I think that, there is sometimes that discomfort in that moment where you're the one not drinking, and, maybe people feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. But I think that all of the moments after, I'm just so much more enjoyable to be around, and I'm able to really be present with the people that I'm with and listen to the things that they're telling me. And, people really enjoy being listened to, and people being present for them. So I think that it has made social situations actually so much easier for me, and so much more calming, because I'm not just so focused on drinking and how I'm appearing to these people, but rather how can I be present in this moment and just set an example of what not drinking could look like if they ever were interested in that.
Yeah, I love that. That's just awesome. So cool. So, what have been some of the things that have been really surprising to you?
That's a good question. I think that I would say just the amount of money you save. I don't
Mm.
think that I really made that connection for a really long time. And I remember there was this one trip I went on when I was really in a heavier drinking time of my life. And it was with a lot of friends who actually didn't drink, who I'd never met before. And I remember thinking it was so weird that like my bill was always so much higher than theirs, even though we were going to these same restaurants. And it kind of clicked, but I didn't really make that connection fully, that it was because I was the one ordering several drinks and they weren't. And so I would say the money saved has just been a huge thing. I think that the confidence that comes with being really sure of a decision has been surprising. And that has really translated into a lot of other areas of my life as well. And I think that the other thing that's been a little bit surprising is realizing that a lot of times I was the one instigating the drinking, and people are actually okay to not get really drunk every time we have a drink, or to drink every time we go out. I think I've been surprised with how seamless that integration has been with a lot of different people, and how people actually really appreciate not always having alcohol be the center of every single social situation.
It's super surprising. And I think also just how much it's changing culturally
Yes.
day by day. I
Yes.
feel like every day there's a new celebrity who's decided, or not even decided. They're like, I haven't been drinking for a year now. I'm coming out publicly about it.
Right.
It's
Right.
just really fun and really
Yeah,
cool.
it's very cool to see. And I think that just getting to, just see how many people out there are really proud of sharing this about their lives, and how much information there is out there. It kind of feels like I've tapped into this whole world I didn't even know was happening, that's just been exploding over the last decade. So it's very cool to get to see just the shockwave effects of all of these really positive changes.
That's awesome. It's just amazing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, this has been so great. Thank you so much. Let me finish off with a question that I always sort of ask at the end, which is if you were going to go back in time to the part of you in the past that was stuck and struggling, and tell her about what life is like now, what would you say?
Gosh, I love this question. I think it's such a cool way to think about, your journey with alcohol. I think that I would say, looking back on my heaviest drinking time and thinking about telling myself something about what life is like now, I would say that everything that I'm really trying to get out of alcohol, which for me, I felt like was genuine connection, new relationships, exciting and new experiences, and self confidence. I would say that all of that and more for me has come out of not drinking. And also that I'm just really proud of myself for listening to those feelings of really deep discomfort and doubt. I feel like I can trace so many seeds back being planted of just like noticing that I didn't like my drinking habits, and how that train of thought has really developed into going on 2 years alcohol free. And so I think that just telling myself to trust myself and trust those feelings of deep discomfort, and seeing where that goes.
Hmm. I love that so much. I think about, we were at a dinner party once, and the question around the table was, if you could teach your kids just one thing, what would you teach them? And mine was, I would want them to know how to trust themselves first. So that really resonates.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has just been such a joy. And yeah, is there anything else you want to add or?
Nope, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's just awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're ready to see how This Naked Mind can help you on your personal health and wellness journey and want to learn more, go to thisnakedmindpodcast.com to learn what your next best step is. Again, that's thisnakedmindpodcast.com. We have all of our free resources, programs, social links, and more available for you there. Plus, if you have your own naked life story to share, you can submit it there as well. Until next week, stay curious.